Getting close to the start of the league year in the NFL, the Combine wrapping. Sal Capaccio on our Western Hotline. His State of the Bills series has been an ongoing thing last couple of weeks. Morning, Sal.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good. How was the weekend? A lot of watching guys run 40s. If you decided to tune into that, it was that. It was some golf and some sabers. But the Combine's about the big guys running, and then when you get to the weekend, it's can anybody break the record? Nobody did break Xavier Worthy's record, so,
No, but how about the guy, Isaiah Bond, who goes up in front of everybody, and he says, I'm going to break the record. And he runs like a 4.4.
Yeah. Right. Tough.
Look, it's one thing to have I'm really good, and I think I can soften the blow. I mean, this guy was really all in on it. And if he ran even like a 4.29, okay, I get it. He ran a 4.4.
Yeah. Don't you think what happens there? Has he run something do those guys, I wonder if those guys practice it. And maybe he had someone with a stopwatch tell him, you ran a 4.25. Maybe he had to have, right? Been close enough at some point? Or maybe not. Maybe that's part of the experience of getting to know these guys. Maybe some guys are just gonna talk even when they know they've got no shot at it.
Right. I just think it looks a little weird, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing because here's why, I guess. 4.4 is a good time, guys. Guy runs a 4.40. He's fast. That's a good time. But when you tell everyone you're going to break the record and then you run a 4.4, it looks and sounds a lot slower than it actually is.
Was Brandon Beane applauding because he likes when guys run slower than they're supposed to?
That's the Gabe Davis one, right? You're right about that.
Sal, there is something to that, like different types of speed, where we know Keon Coleman hit the highest speed in the gauntlet drill, and whether it's the 40 or the 3-cone or the 10-yard split, there are different types of speed, and if we're just getting on receiver, they say they want speed, they say they want explosiveness. Would you feel comfortable kind of nailing down what type of speed it is?
It's a good question. I think the Bills want more, they want speed, no doubt. I'm sure they want, burners, but it's more suddenness, quickness, separation speed. It's sideline-to-sideline speed. And, yes, of course, that means I'm not just saying the only guys. Of course, they want you to be able to get down the field. The Bills want guys with speed with the ball in their hands, but also speed, I would say, more short, intermediate, be able to get open, things like that. That kind of speed, I think, is what the Bills are looking for in their offense. Sean McDermott said it again a couple weeks ago, last Monday, whatever, when we met him. There's two different kinds of speed. He didn't say two different kinds of speed. He said he believes in stretching the field both vertically and horizontally, right? So I think that just goes to show you, you need speed across the field. If Josh Allen's running and rolling out to his right, you got to have guys also being able to get open as they're running to their right, not just down the field. And we've seen that, right? The Bills have a type of quarterback that if you can keep the play alive for a while. So, yeah, they'll be looking for that. And I think the more telling comment, though, was from Brandon Beane, which is he said, his quote was, football is not played on a track. Yes, you'd love speed. He goes, I'm always looking for speed, but they have to be a football player first. Now, that's not going to sit well with a lot of people who see Xavier Worthy get passed up and the Bills trade out of that spot, and Xavier Worthy has a nice game and end of the season for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not going to sit well. They're going to say, what are you talking about? Just go get the fastest guy you can. But the Bills have, a belief. Look, it's not just running fast. It's also being able to play football in a lot of different ways, and that's what he said.
What do you think about whenever we talk about this speed and it's downfield and it's often us talking about receiver or sometimes it could be running back too? What about defensively? Because McDermott got asked about that this weekend too, Sal, on One Bills Live, and he talked about for defense especially, you want a combo of size and speed. How much do you think they need to be faster on defense, not just at wide receiver going forward?
Yeah, I think they do need to be faster. It's an interesting defense is definitely different than offense in this way, which is defense is more about matchups, right? You have to match up with the personnel that you see on offense, and speed is very important, but it's really just important to match up and have the right kind of people. So in certain spots, you're going to need more speed. You're going to need faster corners or be able to cover a little bit more field, linebackers, sideline to sideline, that type of speed, right? Do you want really quick burst speed off the edge? That's a different kind of speed than just running straight line, obviously. So I do think they need to get faster on defense, but I think that more than anything, they have to have different guys who can do different things. It's not just let's go target more speed or let's go target more power. It's hey, if a team is going to roll out, 2 tight ends on us, we have to be able to play this way. If they're going to spread the field with 3 different real fast guys, we got to be able to cover the field and have that speed. So defensively is a little trickier. I think you have to, yes, I think they want to upgrade their speed. More than anything, Joe, I think they just want to make sure they have different options when it comes to matchups.
Right. Is Dorian Williams maybe a good name to think of here? Because he's one of their fastest players on defense, but we know the one drawback in his game is sometimes he just flies past things.
That's exactly right. So it's one thing you can get there in a hurry. That's fine. But if you're getting there out of control, or you're not getting to the right spot, or you're diagnosing late, doesn't matter. And this is what I go back to with why I think they felt a lot more comfortable with Matt Milano playing at the end of the year, even though he's coming off the injury. Yes, Dorian Williams can get to a spot quicker, but Matt diagnoses to get there quicker, if that makes sense. He understands where he needs to go. He reads the play, and because of that, and then he can get there a little more under control. That is not a shot at Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams just plays a different style of football, but you would often see Dorian Williams out of position much, much more than you'd ever see Matt Milano out of position, even though you'd also get a few really big plays and tackles for loss by Dorian Williams, because when he does see what's happening, he gets there very quickly and makes that play.
Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline, kind of wrapping up the combine here. So one thing we think we can learn, this kind of gets to a point about Dorian Williams, and I'm thinking about Spencer Brown here, speed, testing, all these things, they all kind of funnel into something called relative athletic score, which is something we've seen the Bills. I don't know that they would lean on it, or, it could be causational, it could be correlational, where the players that they select tend to be really athletic players. And there's a clip from Sean McDermott going around saying, you want speed on defense, but you want power. And the Bills, more often than not, they are leaning on this score, or at least it's matching up when looking at some of the players that they pick.
Yeah, that's right. So the Bills, I think there's several players they've drafted over the last several years that really fit into he's just a freak, right, for his size, what he can move as an athlete. I think Spencer Brown's a great example of this. Spencer Brown is a freakish athlete for his size, right?
Yeah, he had
Tommy Doyle.
Spencer Brown had a perfect RAS.
Right, yeah.
10 out of 10 on athleticism based on relative athletic score. That factors in your size and what you do.
No doubt. Tommy Doyle, Ryan Vandermark. These guys are big guys. And obviously, we know Tommy Doyle has since retired. Ryan Vandermark's still on the team, but these are big guys who can do different things, and they like the versatility. One of that, when you look at offensive linemen, I think RAS is probably big for the Bills because they want guys who can be versatile. You're not just drafting a big tackle who can't really go inside and play guard. You're not just drafting a guard who can't stand up to some things outside of tackle. Look at Alec Anderson. He can really kind of play all 5 positions, to be quite honest with you. Now, he's not... you're not going to really put him at tackle to be there for 17 games, but in a pinch, he could do it. But that's why they like it there. And then you look around the board. Sure, a guy like Dorian Williams, oh my God, he has these traits where he's super fast, he's super athletic. The Bills really like. How about Greg Rousseau? Greg Rousseau is a freaky, athletic, his body type. Same thing with Tremaine Edmonds. The same year, Tremaine Edmonds, Josh Allen. I would say this is how they drafted Josh Allen. It was, we're swinging for the best possible result we can get on this guy. And look what happened. He's a league MVP. So, yes, I do think the Bills care about that. Now, going back to your comment about what McDermott said about power, I just think this has been a theme this year. I think when you're thinking of the Bills and the offseason guys, it just seems it's more, yes, speed is important. I think the Bills feel they just have to be more powerful and stronger. That seems to be, to me, especially on defense. Now, offense might be, let's get more speed. I'm just talking defense right now. I think the Bills feel they have to be stronger more than they feel they have to be faster.
Is that the line especially you're thinking of for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Front 7 especially, but the line. Yeah, and maybe not even front 7. So I think Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, we'll see. And I know there's a lot out there that people are wondering what they're going to do with Milano. I still think it'd be a little surprising to me if they move on. It could happen, there's no doubt, because there is some financial implications there, and you have to decide, with the injuries and his age, no doubt. But it's really more up front. I think this specific point relates to more of their front. This is defensive tackle, this is defensive end. It just seems to me that everything I'm hearing, everything that all the breadcrumbs seem to be pointing to the Bills, thinking they have to get stronger and more powerful. And we can relate that to them even moving on from their strength and conditioning coach, guys. And I've said, they moved on from Eric Ciano. We know that. Their strength and conditioning coach. And I've said this a few times, and I want people to remember, when people think of strength and conditioning, they almost always, fans just go to the injury part, right? Oh, injuries, why? How many injuries? They have too many injuries. They've not. Why'd they fire him? There's not that many injuries. I don't think it had to do with injuries. I think it had to do with the strength. It was telling us that Dalton Kincaid didn't have the play strength. It was telling us that Keon Coleman wasn't physical enough when he came back from his injury. Just little things like that. And then hearing McDermott say what he said, I just think the strength part, the power part, is something that is really going to be concentrated on this offseason up front.
On the combine from this weekend, Sal, one guy that I got asked a couple times about on Twitter, but I think this is a Bulldog guy. This is his favorite draft idea. Nick Emenwari, the safety, 6'3", like Kyle Hamilton type, where he's just a freak athlete. He ran a 4.3. He might even be a moot point here because he's probably just played himself out of being picked around where the Bills are. But when I was getting asked about him, Sal, I was wondering, because you've talked about this way about safety for years, and the Bills have acted this way. If a guy like that were like the perfect pick for them in round one, like, is there a scenario where you could see safety being on their board in round one with the idea that they would play right away, right? Because isn't that an interesting puzzle where if the guy was the best player on the board, or maybe like a guy like this where he's a freak athlete and he might be the best safety in the class, but don't we kind of know about the Bills that it takes a lot for them to put a guy in right away at that position?
Yeah, I mean, the Bills basically operate with, you really have to know our system. You have to be ready to play before we play you at that position. And I think that Cole Bishop had a chance to be that guy last year, but because of his injury in camp, it never materialized. And that's a great example, Joe. He missed a little bit of time. Was it a couple of weeks? He never recovered. He just could not get on the field because he just missed too much time to have the time on task. I don't know whatever happened to Mike Edwards. He had a little bit of an injury too, and I think the same thing kind of happened. I guess that was what happened, but and he's a veteran, and I said many times he's familiar with the system, but even that's a great example. He just couldn't get on the field. Look who played. Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. I sat here in the offseason, Bulldog and I joke about it, and he says, every time you said it to me, Sal, I would say, man, there's no way, right? And I would say to those guys every day in the summer, I think Damar Hamlin's starting. Damar Hamlin, because that's what they trust, the guys who know their system. And then Cole Bishop goes in against the Texans, and unfortunately for him, that one play that goes over the top for Nico Collins, right? And that's just a great example. There was a miscommunication on that play. So now you go into an offseason where Damar is a free agent. The only two safeties you have on your roster, true safeties, are really Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp. You do have Cam Lewis. He's a safety, but he's really a nickel corner. He's the backup nickel corner. So they have to add depth there. Now, Kareem Jackson's a free agent. Damar Hamlin's a free agent. So those are the only two, Rapp and Bishop. We asked Sean McDermott about Cole Bishop at his Monday briefing last week at the Combine. And there were some media members who took away him kind of being a little less high on him. I didn't take it that way. I think what he's doing is saying, I'm just not handing it to him. Like, we're very confident, but he's got to go get it. He's got to go earn it. That being said, Joe, I think about what you just said. Let's say a true, real safety falls to them at 30. Emenwari, if that's the guy. Man, it'd be really tough for this team to pass up because I think the Bills would feel that he could really help them. But is he really stepping in over Cole Bishop in his second year after they showed so much faith towards the end of the season with him? And Taylor Rapp, who, by the way, had a really nice year last year, and he doesn't have this super expensive contract, and we saw that, they need him on the field. I don't know if that would work. I don't know. Be a very tough question.
To that point, Emenwari, his RAS score was 10, a perfect 10.
I thought I saw that they hadn't had this nailed down yet, but whoever does those scores was trying to figure out if he's the most athletic safety ever at the Combine. Yeah.
For perspective or context, Cole Bishop was a 9.8.
Okay, so he wasn't far off.
Cole Bishop, so what this RAS score does for anyone out there, they do size grade for your position, like how well sized are you for it, and your explosion rate, that's on jumping, and then there's composite speed, and all three come together. And Bishop is elite on speed, great on explosion, and great on size for a composite score of a 9.88 out of 10. So he fits the bill of, they draft guys like this. They draft their athletes back there. And, Sal, we talked about this a lot when they were trying to figure out what to do with safety, how much they value whether or not you understand the system. This is how Mike Edwards really never got on the field for them, right? The injury, he fell behind. And Bishop, if if it comes together for him, I mean, you might want the safety that's a 10. You got one you picked last year that ranks really highly in this regard. So, I'm storing that away. I looked at some other
You'd
players.
hope the ceiling also with him is a little higher than some other guys.
And of course, like, this score is not perfect. Kyer Elam has a pretty good one. Christian Benford has a really high one. Both guys are over 8. So they consistently are taking guys that are truly great athletes. And Bishop, he and Keon Coleman, Sal, I feel like this offseason is going to be a lot about how much those two are ready to take big steps for them.
No doubt. These are guys I think they really are going to be counting on in their second year. You look at him in Maury, 6'3", 220. Yeah. Bishop is smaller, but he's still pretty. He's a good size safety. 6'2", 207. That's a nice size safety, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a guy that put it together. Everything you just talked about, Jeremy, no doubt about that. I think back to like last year's draft when we have this and we talk about this, and you look at the season that Cooper DeJean had. There's a lot of people who love Cooper DeJean coming out, no doubt, and felt the Bills should draft him. So, you can go back to that. And I kept thinking to myself, where's he playing in this team, though? Because you can't rewrite history. At this time last year, I think we were all very confident that Rasul Douglas was going to be a really nice cornerback for them in 2024. I don't think he had the best year, but at this time last year, was anybody thinking that had any questions about Rasul Douglas? No. And then you have Christian Benford. And then if you're talking about safety, yes, there were some, maybe he could step in at safety, but Cooper DeJean really, his main, and then he's not playing Taron Johnson's spot. Right? So, yes, you could have said he could play a little safety, but really he became a corner. He became really good for the Eagles. So that's the puzzle you have to fit. I mean, again, you could have revisionist history here, but at this time last year, as much as even I like the player and he could do a lot of different things, I just kept saying, I don't know where he's going to play on this roster, to be quite honest with you.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. Sal, so next up is the new league year free agency. That's in 9 days.
Yeah.
A week from today, legal tampering.
Okay, week from today's legal tampering. Right. And Andrew Berry, Sal, I'll start here with this, that the Browns GM continues to reiterate, like, he's playing hardball. I'm not talking with teams about Garrett not doing it. If that continues to be the case, where if you're Bean, and this would be your dream idea, but the guy just won't take your call, he just won't talk with you about it, like, this is going to get tested, right, within the next 9 days. Sal is like, yes. To what extent do you go and have your offseason versus how much do you bet on, this eventually this guy's going to have to start talking? Maybe you don't. Maybe you say, I just can't wait around and wait for Garrett, and I have to go start talking to guys.
It's a tough rub here between meshing that with what the Browns need to do and how, because of the financial implications of all this. So I think, Joe, to answer your question, you have to have your offseason. You got to know before free agency if you have a chance at this happening, like now, and if not, you just go do what you need to do, because if it comes time where you do make a deal, I mean, what are we talking? Draft time? It's either going to be draft time or like post June 1, right? Mm-hmm. If it's a draft day deal, to me, the Browns, if they wait until after the draft, they're not getting anything until 2026. So you're kind of they're gonna want to have some urgency. But if that's the case, then okay, we'll wait. Well, now you do have post June 1, and you could make some moves if you're Brandon Bean after June 1 to still clear up some money. But again, if you decide to do that now and you know it, then you're kind of already planning for that money. So it's a very, very tough needle to thread. I agree with you. But I think, to answer your question, you can't sit around and wait. I mean, that's just even if they wind up trading him, it might have to be to you. I mean, how can you plan on that? So I think you got to make the calls. You got to see where they're at. Hey, we'll revisit it later, whatever. But the Bills cannot operate their offseason not knowing if they're going to get a guy like Garrett or Crosby, let's say, Micah Parsons, anybody you throw out there. They have to operate their offseason as if that's not going to happen if the scenario you just played out, which is the Browns are just holding firm.
Yeah. Sal Capaccio, the Northtown Automotive Extra Point Show coming up 10 o'clock. Sal, you've also got your State of the Bills series continuing, and up next is linebackers.
Linebackers, yeah. I'm going to talk about that this week because it is an interesting position when it comes to, I think, specifically Matt Milano. I'm on record, and I'll tell you, I think that because the Bills, first of all, they would lose money if they release Matt Milano before June 1st. Now, some people believe, okay, he could be a June 1 cut. They could save some money. They would have to spread that money out. They wouldn't save the money till June 1. I just think there's one thing that I keep going back to. they trusted Matt Milano coming back from after a year and a half immediately on the field before Dorian Williams, right? Like, you know what I mean? As soon as he was ready, he played. So what is that going to change now that he's healthy? The only question would be, at his age and their injuries, do they think that, he still can stay healthy? I still think he's on the roster as I sit here today. And then behind him, there's honestly, guys, not a ton to really debate or get into because they have everybody under contract except for Tyreek Maddox-Williams, who they signed at the end of the year to a practice squad contract. But that's about it. So everybody else, Joe Andreessen, that's a nice guy to talk about. And I think he becomes he might actually beat out Bale Inspector for that backup middle linebacker job next year.
One last thing I want to ask you about, Sal, because I know you talked with Joe Shane and Dable last week, or was this Joe Shane at the combine?
I did not. Dable did not speak to the media.
Oh, okay.
At all. He didn't do any podium. I did not run into him. I did actually speak to Joe Shane personally because I saw him. We said hello and exchanged pleasantries, and then I went to his podium. So go ahead. Yes.
So they strike out on Stafford. Do you buy the Rodgers stuff? Like, can you see Aaron Rodgers being their quarterback? Because I'm trying to figure out what else they would do.
I can, Joe, because from everybody I've talked to, they are very desperate. They have to win. If they don't win, they're out of jobs, right? I mean, so the question really becomes, do they feel that that's too desperate? Like, is that like putting, I think it's kind of funny. Like, come on, Rodgers with Dable, right, on the sidelines.
Staying in New York,
that kind
too.
of thing.
Yeah.
What's that?
Staying in New York, same stadium, too, for
Yeah,
Rodgers.
staying in New York and that media market, that could be a disaster. That could blow up. But at the same time, I think that they might have to make that risk. They might have to take it because if they draft a quarterback early on, and there's some reporting that they could be targeting Cam Ward and they want to move up to number 1. I saw that report over the weekend. Well, that's fine, but do you think you can win with that roster and a rookie quarterback? Because if you can't, guess what? You're drafting Cam Ward or whoever for the next GM and head coach because they're not going to have their jobs much longer. So I do think it's possible that they pivot. I think Justin Fields is an option for them, and I think Sam Darnold's an option for them. It's not just Rodgers. There are a few guys out there. So I think Fields, I think Darnold, Rodgers, no doubt. They have to have a veteran, or I think you're probably looking at a new GM, a new head coach next year.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. Thank you, Sal.
You got it, guys.
All right.